Good evening, members. Hi. Yes, thank you for your punctuality this evening. Hi, Ants. Hi. Welcome to the Bangkok meeting. I think you've met our treasurer, Ashley. Yes. Hi. I see a few more people streaming in. Okay, good evening to all of those who are here. My name is 𝘊𝘵 and I'm the 𝘊𝘭𝘰𝘶 chapter president of Cloud Cryptid Friendship Society. We have a few regular faces here, but many new faces, which is very heartening. I think our outreach and flyer distribution at 𝘊𝘭𝘰𝘶 Mall has been very successful. So thank you to member Ashley for putting in the work there. I'll get a start on our program for this evening because we are working under some time constraints. I'll explain in a little bit, but we're a little bit short on our budget this month and we haven't been able to keep up with our Zoom subscription. So we do have to keep the session to under 45 minutes. So I'll start with the agenda for the day. If we can go to the next slide, please. We'll have to skip a few of the items here because of the aforementioned time shortage, but we'll cover our most pressing issues. So I'll give a brief overview of our census efforts, both on the neighborhood and on the national level. And we will go over some reminders on our equipment inventory and our member dues, which are very crucial things to take note of. And I will make sure to wrap up so we have time for our member research presentations, which I know we're all excited for, where 3 of our members will share about the discoveries they've made in their research on our Cloud Cryptid friends. So lots to go over. I'll just jump in. We don't have any time to address questions or comments as we go on tonight. So please just drop in anything you have to say in the chat and we will try to address it there. Okay, so here's a quick summary of our recent census efforts. And for some of our newer members who are joining for maybe the first time and are maybe not so well versed in their cloud cryptozoology, cloud cryptids are keystone species in our internet ecosystem, and they cluster around our physical communications infrastructure. So one of our major tasks as CCFS members is to connect with and catalog the cloud cryptid population. And here in Singapore, we have one of the highest CC sighting rates in the world, and our internet connectivity rates have led some people to estimate that our cloud cryptid to human population ratio could be as high as 11:1. And that's very exciting for befrienders like ourselves, but we cannot take it for granted. And in the wake of recent internet outages, our national chapter has plans to conduct a comprehensive census on the island. And the circles in purple show us the areas where this effort is ongoing. Of course, right here in the 𝘊𝘭𝘰𝘶 subchapter, we've been working very hard, monitoring day and night. And in the Tekong subchapter, the Clementi subchapter, the Yishun and Kallang subchapters, as you can see, are all contributing to the census as well. So good work to all of them. The areas I've marked over there in blue, in the blue circles, there have been spikes in recent sightings, and we've suggested at the national level that more resources should be directed there for a proper census to be taken. We've received some reports of sightings on Jurong Island, in Changi, and very excitingly, right next door from our neighbors in Bangkok. And the circles in orange refer to where more outreach is required. These are areas where there's a lot of new construction taking place and new infrastructure being installed, and so potential for new clusters of our cryptid friends to make homes. So we'll be expanding our recruitment efforts in Tuas, Changi, and Tengah, and we hope to start and to strengthen our befriender communities in those neighborhoods. All right, great. Moving on, I wanted to address our equipment inventory. Our subchapter has just piloted this shared equipment library because, of course, we understand that some hardware that we use in the course of connecting with our cloud cryptid friends is prohibitively expensive, and we want to level the playing field here and make sure we have equal opportunities for all of us to observe and befriend our cloud cryptid friends. But that, of course, means we have to take some shared responsibility and be careful and communicative when it comes to our use of these items. So member Ashley, not to put you on the spot here, but please do be mindful that the field emission detector you loaned out is missing a charger, and you will need to replace it. Thank you. In the spirit of shared responsibility, I would also like to address our member dues. Our treasurer, Ashley, has flagged that we are missing a substantial sum of our total member dues. So I would like to urge all members who have not yet made payment to please do so as soon as possible. And if you are indeed facing difficulties in making payment this month, please don't hesitate in reaching out and letting us know so we can make a waiver if you need. So as we all know, our goal here is to protect and befriend our Cloud Cryptid friends, and every cent is accounted for and goes towards these efforts. As we are a young subchapter, we don't have very much in terms of savings. So any shortfall really has an immediate detrimental impact, such as losing our Zoom subscription this month. And 45 minutes is really not enough to work on everything we have to in these meetings. So please do send in your dues so next month's meeting can be longer. Okay, thank you. So that's all the admin out of the way. Thank you to all of those who came in on time and stuck through the briefing. And it's now time for the fun part of today's meetings, which is our members' research presentations. The Cloud Cryptid Friendship Society is dedicated to expanding the knowledge base surrounding our cryptid friends to help raise awareness and strengthen the conservation efforts. And to that end, we have supported the research work of our citizen research members across various disciplines, and we have exciting presentations today from all across the academic spectrum. And we'll be starting with myself, yours truly. I'll be presenting on my research into the origins of the species, but I have to remind you all that our member presentations are not all endorsed by the national and international chapters of the CCF and are presented for your independent consideration. And my radical reimagining of the commonly accepted CCFS origins have regrettably been spurned by the national leadership of the CCFS, but I trust you all will approach my research with the open-mindedness that our society is known for. Well, moving on, Treasurer Ashley will present documenting techniques, the rail internet service providers, and take us under the surface to observe our cryptid friends on a quantum level. And finally, we have a special guest visiting us today, all the way from Mountbatten. And everybody, please welcome Anne from the Mountbatten subchapter, who has kindly stepped in today to take the place of our 𝘊𝘺𝘺 member, Derek, who unfortunately won't be joining us this evening due to some digestive issues. So sending our best wishes to Derek, please take care. And to Anne, we look forward to hearing how classical mythology can inform our understanding of cloud cryptids. Very exciting stuff in 𝘊𝘺𝘺. And so without further ado, let's go into our presentation. So thank you all. I'll start with mine. So good evening again to all of you. And for everyone who joined us a little bit later, my name is 𝘊𝘺𝘺, and I'm the president of the 𝘊𝘺𝘺 chapter of the Cloud Cryptid Friendship Society. And today I will be conducting first in a series of public lectures on my new book called Cable Cryptids Revisited, which is a re-examination of the origins of cloud cryptids as we commonly understand them. And our ebook is out now, available online. I'm so grateful for the support and warm reception it's received from this group. It means a lot to me, especially since the current leadership of CCFS has publicly rejected my findings. And I would like to start by saying, in the spirit of open inquiry, I'd like to offer you all a 15% discount on my ebook with the code 𝘊𝘺𝘺. That's 𝘊𝘺𝘺𝑔 for a 15% discount on my ebook. I invite you to draw your own conclusions on the validity of my proposal. So thank you very much, and let's get right into it. Next slide, please. Today, I will propose a new theory on the origins of the species, and one that found much resistance in the upper echelons of the Cloud Cryptid Friendship Society because it disrupts the narrative of the first cloud cryptid discovery and the founding of the Singapore chapter of the society. And my proposal is that the first record of cloud cryptid presence in Singapore predates the first official sighting of cloud cryptids in 1968, and in fact dates back to nearly a century before, in 1871. Yeah, the first year a telegraph cable in Singapore went live. So for those new to the society, our founding mother is also our founder's mother. And the common consensus held by members is that the first cloud cryptid sighting on the island was made by the amateur cryptozoologist and professional housewife, Mrs. Angelina Chan, in 1968. Her rudimentary catalogue of the species was developed and expounded upon by her son, Dr. Aloysius Chan, first as an undergrad and then as a professor of biology at NUS. And Dr. Chan's 1992 paper defining a species was met with widespread ridicule from the faculty and led to his eventual termination from the university and his expulsion from academia, unfortunately. But Fortunately for us, Dr. Chan began exchanging letters and then emails with fellow disgraced academics and amateur cryptozoologists and helped to found the first online forum dedicated to the study of the species, cloudcryptochat.com. And by the mid-1990s, sadly, infighting on the forum had reached a fever pitch, with moderators captured between two factions, the befrienders who believed humanity should seek to understand and conserve cloud cryptids, and the trappers who sought to capture and capitalize on cloud cryptids' ability to consume the detritus of internet communication systems, to manipulate global communications and short the stock market. So Dr. Chan, along with a splinter faction of befrienders, came to the conclusion that ground-up mobilization was crucial and necessary to save the species from those who would seek to exploit them. And he formed the Cloud Cryptid Friendship Society, with chapters across 23 countries and territories across the globe. And so since these beginnings, the global CCFS has expanded to count over 10,000 members. And while cloud cryptids are still considered a fringe theory by most in cryptozoology, we are gaining ground with more members joining the cause every year. And the cloud cryptid term now is so ubiquitous that many of us don't realize that it wasn't accepted into our popular lexicon until the mid-90s, because the cloud came into use as a description of the universe of shared data that telescript programmers could enter. But Madam Chan called these creatures by another name, cable creatures, without her access to corporate mainframes that served as the feeding grounds for early cryptids. Madam Chan's only site of observation was actually the cables that data flowed through. And it's accepted that cryptids existed long before Madam Chan's observations, but their ephemeral nature, one that is not entirely perceivable by the human senses, means that proof of this existence is lost to history. And I stumbled upon cable creatures early on in my tenure as 𝘊𝘭𝘰𝘶 subchapter president and immediately wondered if we might be able to observe traces of our cloud cryptid friends in some cables that existed even before the advent of the internet. And my critics in the Cloud Cryptid Friendship Society have questioned the necessity of locating the origin of cloud cryptids in the pre-internet era. They've accused me of muddying the waters of our field with research that distracts from pressing conservation concerns and cataloging. And they pointed out that the advent of cloud computing, did induce an exponential increase in cloud cryptids. And some have considered this inflection point as the origin of cloud cryptids as we know them in the internet age. But I argue it's incumbent on us as cryptozoologists to reveal the true origins of the species and locate their development in tandem with the efforts of humanity to communicate with one another. As the cloud is, after all, a place on Earth, and to protect our Earth, we need to understand it. So Madam Chan made her observations during a period of rapid development in post-independence Singapore. And along with physical infrastructure, our network infrastructure was also growing at a rapid pace. As an aside, a lot has been written about the Ouroboros of corporations and shell corporations that congeal together to create the former statutory board Singtel, and the morphological effects that this differentiation has prompted in cable-dwelling cryptid types. And I welcome the publishing of a new paper by Li and Li in the Journal of Cloud Cryptozoology this month that expounds upon this. Inspired by studies such as this, I decided to take a closer look at pre-fiber optic cables for evidence of earlier species. And this investigation proved very fruitful, and the results I found has reshaped my life and set me on the path to writing this book. And it's first important for us to understand the beginnings of Singapore's status as a cable hub. So we know that our island boasts the greatest global density of cloud cryptids, and our estimated cryptid per capita ratio is 11:1. And this ratio is a direct result of the proliferation of data centers, internet penetration, and the network of subsea cables we see here that transit the island and connect Singapore to the globe. Our status as a hub for subsea fiber optic cables, however, finds its origins in our colonial past, where Singapore's location and stability proved a prime spot for the laying of telegraph cables. And furthermore, our island was the site of discovery of an imported material that enabled the very existence of these cables, which is 𝘊𝘺𝘺 𝘊𝘺𝘺. That is a resin that comes from this tree that you can see here. And the gum resin sap of the tree was pliable in hot water and inelastic in regular conditions, which made it a perfect protective material for subsea telegraph cables. And the material was widely known to those indigenous to the region and was used to form parang handles and other tools. But British surgeon William Montgomery discovered the material, quote unquote, and took it back to England where it was used for dental purposes before Michael Faraday, the technologist, decided to use it to coat telegraph cables. And before long, the tree was felled to near extinction as telegraph networks started crisscrossing the globe and basically shrunk the world, enabling near instant communication. So this picture here is of a 𝘊𝘺𝘺𝘵 tree at the Botanic Gardens. I invite you to go see it for yourself. I think it's somewhere here. If you can see, I put the coordinates there. I invite you to go search for it. It's a very tall tree, very beautiful. You can pick up a souvenir too. And it really helps you appreciate how shocking it must have been to leave almost no trees left for William Montgomery and gang to totally harvest our island's population of this very, very large tree. But in the present day, of course, our telegraph cables have long been decommissioned, but most of these cables have not been retrieved and they're laying deep under sea. And collectors can purchase sections of these cables retrieved by divers and other such hobbyists online. I began my own inquiry into early cryptids by purchasing one such section and conducting a detailed study on the premise that much like the nautilus shells and decomposing bodies of prehistoric creatures that have long gone extinct, cloud cryptids too have left traces of their existence for future Earth inhabitants to discover. So I've begun cataloging the fossil imprints that I found in these 𝘊𝘺𝘺𝘵 coverings, and I'm on my way to completing a first survey. So what comes next? My efforts to further study these fossils have been sadly hampered by the Cloud Cryptid Friendship Society's current leadership's disavowal of my practices, and I've been slightly blacklisted from CCFS's global grant funding bodies, and I rely totally on the goodwill of believing members like yourself to continue my research. And my presentation today is just a surfaced view of my research and findings. I invite you all to purchase a copy of my book with the discount code 𝘊𝘺𝘺𝘵 for 15% off to find out more and to please support my work. Thank you very much. 15% off 𝘊𝘺𝘺𝘵. That's all from me today, and I will hand over my time to our member and also treasurer of the 𝘊𝘺𝘺 subchapter, Ashley He.
Hello, good evening, members. So thank you for giving me the chance today to speak more about my ongoing research on our cloud cryptids. For those first time here, I started out because I'm very passionate about photography. I think photography is about presenting facts, and that's what I like about it. So together with my experience in ground instruments and land survey, I wanted to give more insight into documenting our real internet service providers using photo evidence instead of only relying on written accounts. So today, I will share with you about how to better represent our cloud cryptids. Before I begin talking about my new imaging techniques, I want to first give everyone some context around the cloud cryptids I've been observing. So as all of you should already know, Singapore, driven by land shortage, is increasingly opting for multi-layered and overlapping developments underground. As urbanization intensifies, we have been intensively using our underground space so that more land above can be freed up for housing, parks, and community use. As part of my early work in observing cloud cryptids, I went around Singapore documenting different underground cable laying projects. At that time, I had no way of directly photographing them. All I could do was represent them through the sites of which they might have existed. Reviewing these images, I realized that I might have been looking at what seemed to be graveyards. Our cloud cryptids are very much alive, and they should be a flowing energy, not a single place. Thus, this led me to look at other documentation techniques, such as mapping. As the National Mapping Authority, Singapore Land Authority recognizes the urgency for the map of the underground. Such a map will help avoid uncertainties in planning, design, construction, ownership, and maintenance of underground features and developments. We have long used diagrams to map and document these utility cable networks. And now that technology is more and more advanced, we have started to create 3D versions for imaging these cable networks. In October 2017, Singapore Land Authority and Singapore ETH Centre started the Digital Underground project with the aim of developing a reliable 3D map of subsurface utilities. The idea was to create an underground digital twin of Singapore. However, through my further research, I found that data often lacks depth of information necessary for its transformation into 3D. The contrast between advanced and precise 3D models of the above-ground urban landscape and the complex 2D overlay of different underground structures creates a diffuse image like this. This image was created using a 3D point cloud representation from laser scanning technology. It enables a detailed representation of the complex urban landscape that a photograph lacks. Its surface textures and wispy artifacts are almost witness to the cloud cryptids. This marks a paradigm shift in recording our visible environment. New surveying solutions offer rapid, remote, and accessible data capture. Visual positioning solutions such as the 𝘊𝘭𝘰𝘶 offers GNSS RTK positioning combined with an imaging device that measures positions from images to create georeference 3D measures. These technologies can enhance the means of photography through data modeling to allow us to observe more from the land than we could ever before, which brings us one step closer to achieving a system of tracking our cloud cryptids. However, these open trench imaging techniques I've come across were mostly at private and very shallow sites. This is the case as, according to the State Lands Act, landowners own the underground space up to 30 meters under the Singapore height datum. This is the reason why I've only been making progress on private land as opposed to other areas in Singapore. This led me down deeper research on Singapore's underground infrastructure. At 30 meters, that's mostly set for our MRTs. From 30 to 55 meters, it's reserved for our deep tunnel sewage system. And finally, only at 60 meters is where we find our actual electricity, telecom, and internet cables. So this poses the issue of observation, where I can no longer document our cloud cryptids at depths of 60 meters using regular visual imaging techniques. This is why recently, technology such as the ground penetrating radar, or the GPR, is proving to be an increasingly useful geophysical technique, allowing us to detect and locate underground entities with a simple scan without the need for digging holes. To explain a bit more, GPR data capture produces radargrams as its primary data. Although these images are not as easy to interpret as photos, they still provide a lot of visual information on our cloud cryptids. If you look at this B-scan radargram on the right, the presence of a hyperbola indicates the potential presence of an entity underground. And many hyperbolas near one another in a linear pattern could indicate the presence of a cable or flow. Through interpretation of these scans, new images can be created, indicating the presence of subterranean entities. For example, I was on a project where a Pegasus Stream mobile mapping platform was deployed to capture data along a 1.8 kilometer bi-directional 4-lane road north of Hougang. The data was captured at a speed of 15 kilometers per hour. Scanning of the area took approximately 3 hours. Over the course of the following 3 weeks, the data captured was processed using specialized software, and a total of 108 hypothesized subsurface artifacts were detected in the area. The research on processing wave data then led to my most recent research on quantum imaging techniques. The hypothesis is that if an electron, which can be observed as a wave, as a flow, is able to be theoretically imaged, how can we use the same principles to image a cloud cryptid? On the atomic scale, it is usually more appropriate to describe the electron as a wave than a particle. The square of an electron's wave equation gives the probability function for locating the electron in any particular region. The images generated here are hence called orbitals, which is a term used to describe the shape of the region where there is a high probability of finding a particular electron. This is, however, not a random generation of images. Rather, they are specific configurations that electrons can exist at, as an electron can only vibrate with specific frequencies. These frequencies are called eigenfrequencies, and these multiple images here show the eigenstates associated with these frequencies. All of these specific states form a mathematical set called spherical harmonics. There are an infinite number of these spherical harmonics, but they are specific and discrete. This means that there are no in-between states. This is because an atomic electron can only absorb and emit energy in specific small packets called quanta. It does this by making a quantum leap from one eigenstate to another. This term has been commonly misunderstood to mean any sudden large change. However, in physics, it's the opposite. A quantum leap is the smallest possible change of a system, not the largest. So many of you always ask, why haven't we been able to capture the cryptids yet? If they exist within the subterranean cables underground, surely we'll be able to witness them. But there is where the issue is. Perhaps they've evolved to not move around as we previously know it. Perhaps they are barely perceptible as the smallest possible change in the system, making quantum leaps. One of the largest challenges in observing really small things is that the act of observation itself causes an interaction between the observation device and what is being observed. This is called the observer effect. And this is why I haven't yet had a successful attempt at imaging the cloud cryptids in this way. As you can see in the images, the top row shows the different possibilities of cryptid states. However, when we try to verify the observation, the cryptid cease to exist, leaving behind just a black image vectors, data degraded in its path. To wrap up my presentation, I just want to comment that a well-defined legal framework and valid standards for data capture and exchange are still missing in this field. And the technologies for the capturing of existing buried infrastructure data in subsurface layers are still in an early stage of development. So if anyone is willing to contribute, do drop me an email. It would be very much appreciated. Thank you. I will pass the floor now to 𝘖𝘶.
Sorry, muted. Hello, everybody. Sorry, I'm a historian. I'm not really big on STEM actually. So I just want to say that I'm so sorry this is not the presentation that you were expecting. There's really some very interesting developments going on in next-gen computational linguistic approaches to cryptid communication. But Derek is not feeling well, so I've been asked to fill in the slot for today's presentations. I know this is not, say, very sexy, future-oriented stuff, but I think I have some interesting things to share. So, I think we have about 10 minutes left together, so please give me your full attention for the remaining time. I'm, not really in the tech world, but thank you for welcoming me in the 𝘊𝘭𝘰 subchapter. It's very nice to be visiting. So in the spirit of inclusivity within this working group, where some of our members are a bit newer and may not be 100% caught up, I want to spend some time reiterating why cloud cryptids are important. So cryptids help to maintain the health of our digital ecosystems by devouring corrupted code, smoothing the flow of data, and we share a symbiotic relationship with them. So if you think about, say, the lichen on a tree, if the lichen is healthy, it means air quality is good, it means that the trees are doing well. And similarly, the cloud cryptids respond to the quality of our data. So if they flourish, this sign is that the systems are healthy. And if not, that's when we start to see issues. So the internet outages, lags, latency, data corruption, and decay. So I want to point out that we often think about cloud cryptids as very high-tech beings that need to be studied with very high-tech tools. But as Alicia's presentation mentioned earlier, they actually were present even in a much more lower tech era. So even though it's important to have these scientific thinkings and STEM-informed approaches, very future-oriented stuff, I think it's also important to have the humanities side of the conversation, especially because in the cryptozoology community, we usually venerate the scientific method as a way to, buttress ourselves against allegations that our field of study is pseudoscientific or not very academic. But even as we do this and we assert that cloud cryptids are a field of contemporary importance, I think it's important to take a look at historical accounts and actually methodological approaches to see how other people approach enigmatic and esoteric creatures. Furthermore, I'm noticing that in tech studies more broadly, not just CC studies, there's a slow but worrying formation of false binary between two flawed paradigms of thought. Firstly, the management paradigm, which says that we are the masters of technology, that we control the clouds, and the algorithm and the whole digital cosmos is just a tool, something to be micromanaged and optimized. So to illustrate, we can take a look at a case study of 𝘊𝘵𝘺. So 𝘊𝘵𝘺 is actually a HTTP and reverse proxy server. It's a mail proxy server and a generic TCP UDP proxy server, originally written by 𝘊𝘭𝘰𝘶. And if you just Google 𝘊𝘵, the first few results are going to be things like how to tune it for optimization and for performance. We demand efficiency and high performance optimization. We're always looking for faster, newer, better. And on the other side is the paradigm which approaches technology as something infinitely mysterious, something to be offered worship and supplication. We only have to take a look at this prayer to the almighty 𝘊𝘵 written by Reddit user class_cast_exception, which exemplifies this approach. Now, I just want to clarify that I don't mean to hurt any religious feelings. So please, if you have any discontent, you can address them with me directly. I'm just pointing out observation that this is where people are with 𝘊𝘵 and broadly with technology. Some other examples of this include the blessing of server rooms, blessing of data centers that's really taken off. And in this paradigm, technology is this unfathomable mystery. Algorithms are God that we need spiritual practitioners to intercede with, and the servers are sacred. And the best that we can do is to appease them and hope that if we feed them enough data and enough power, then we'll have seamless uptime. And this is really the cult of the cloud, a veneration of a new software release and new processing speeds as if they are minor miracles. And so I just want to point out that this binary doesn't give us a useful way to really approach technology. And I suspect there is another way that is less flawed, that is more nuanced and holistic. And what if this other way can be understood not by looking towards science and engineering, not by looking towards innovation and the future, but by looking at classical Chinese approaches to mythical river beings. So why this specific topic? So rivers are historically where helpful spiritual presences have been attributed. So they move and they flow and they connect and they nourish and they cleanse. And this is true not just in China, which is my area of specialty, but all around the world. So the Osun River in Nigeria is named after a Yoruba river goddess. It's a symbol of fertility, protection, and love. The Ganges in India and Bangladesh is named after the Hindu goddess Ganga, purifier of sins and bringer of life. The Seine, which winds its way through Paris and France, takes its name from the ancient Gallo-Roman goddess 𝘊𝘶, the protector of health and healing. And these rivers were worshipped not because they were still lakes and ponds, stagnant bodies of water. No, it's not about the storage of water that gave these rivers their divine status. It was their movement, their dynamic nature, the ability to transform the landscape. I argue it's the same with data. In our technological discourse, we have largely centered the conversation on building new data centers. It's always about storage, more storage, better storage, more secure storage. But if we take our cue from classical mythology, we see very quickly it's not the storage that truly matters. We treat data as if it's something to be hoarded, tucked away in digital silos forever. But flow is what gives it power, and is what keeps our digital ecosystems alive. And that's why I think we have to think differently about our relationship with the cloud cryptids. And as I was doing my personal research into the Tang Dynasty, I was struck by how they related to river spirits, and I thought this is an interesting and transferable approach. And so in Imperial China, which I don't really have any photos because they didn't have cameras back then, but the emperor would bestow titles on rivers. So the rivers became part of the imperial framework. So they were dukes, they were marquises, they were part of the emperor's hierarchy. And this wasn't just empty ritual. It was a way of acknowledging their power, their importance to the king's rule, and incorporating that power into a system of mutual respect and responsibility. So the emperor couldn't control the rivers, and he wasn't dumb enough to try, but he could honor them and give them a place in the grand order of things. So in the Tang Dynasty, the Yellow River became the Duke of Numinous Source, the 𝘖𝘶 River became the Duke of Pure Source, and the Yangtze River, the Duke of Vast Source, and the 𝘊𝘭𝘰𝘶 River was the Duke of Long Source. So I'm not suggesting that we march down to the Public Service Commission and petition for the CCs to be made scholars or public service ministers or PA government type stuff, but I am saying that maybe we can adopt an alternate paradigm, a more collaborative approach that acknowledges their existence and their needs and asks them to continue tending to ours. And this is an open question that I would like to pose to the CCFS, both in Hougang, Mountbatten, nationally and internationally. What are the needs of our cloud cryptid friends and what pressing problems do they face? A hypothesis that I have is that as data storage prices have fallen, so too have our standards of data hygiene. We have become hoarders who store everything and think nothing of it, whether it's a half-baked draft or a single-use QR code. In the past, we were so careful about what data stayed with us. You maybe had to delete an SMS to receive a new SMS. But right now, we never delete our text messages. We used to tend to our data like gardens, pruning the weeds so that the flowers could bloom. But as each person's data storage capability increases and our data generation accelerates, our data hygiene has stayed the same, or in fact, probably even deteriorated. And in this glut of detritus, our cloud cryptid friends are struggling. As friends, as collaborators, we have to help them do what they cannot do alone. And they are already doing their part in our ecology. And it is on us to clean up our act and set the standard for data hygiene. I would like to point out that this is an issue close to home, especially as Singaporeans, where our government has started a concerted campaign for Singapore to be seen as a data center hub. Though there was a moratorium in 2019 to assess the environmental impact of data center construction, obviously cloud cryptids as creatures that are not recognized officially by our authorities, these were not included in the survey. So based on this very incomplete environmental and ecological survey, in 2022, the moratorium was lifted and 80 megawatts of capacity was allocated to data centers. And in May earlier this year, another 300 megawatts of capacity was added. So currently we stand in October 2024 on the full moon with the Cloud Cryptid Friendship Society working group. And who knows what the future holds if we do not act now and we do not act soon. So luckily, the government has not quite succeeded in drawing large-scale data center investments despite the added capacity, and we still have time to take action. And so this is my proposal. Under a paradigm of collaboration and shared responsibility, we start a concerted campaign to improve data hygiene. We stop treating data like a sacred relic to be hoarded. We manage it responsibly. We clear out our archives, we delete our drafts, we help our cloud cryptid friends by doing what they cannot do alone. And we work together as partners, not worshippers or masters. So these are my citations. Do reach out via the Hougang subchapter president if you'd like to get in touch. Sorry to speed through this. I noticed there's a timer counting down and we're running out of time for the Zoom. Unfortunately, we are still on the free Zoom subscription as we have not been able to afford premium, and this is an island-wide issue. So I would like to reiterate Alicia's call for member dues because we cannot keep running like this. I know that Google Meet is free, but they invest heavily in data center infrastructure. So the CCFS have declared an international boycott. It's an island-wide issue that we don't have a reliable platform to run our meetings on. So I hope that the next time we meet, we can talk at length with a premium Zoom subscription about next generational computational linguistic approaches to cloud cryptid communications. So please take some time to pay your member dues. Thank you once again to the Hougang subchapter for having me, and thank you all for being such a warm and attentive audience. Happy New Moon, everybody.
Hello and good evening to everyone who is joining us today. I'm 𝘊𝘭𝘰𝘶 from the Singapore Art Museum, and I'll be your host for this episode. So we usually do these introductions before the program starts proper, but as you can tell, the fact that this performance had to start immediately when you came in, and the fact that it also ended the way that it did was very much intentional. So welcome to another episode of Skill Futures. We just watched an online performance by 𝘊𝘂 titled Cloud Cryptid Friendship Society. This session is the 10th episode in the Skill Futures series. And if you've been tuning into the series, thank you so much for staying the course with us as we come yet into another phase of this visual experiment. And for those who may be new to this series, welcome. So if this episode has intrigued you, please check out Singapore Art Museum's YouTube channel, which has a dedicated playlist for this series. But moving on, I'd like to quickly introduce our guest for this evening. 𝘊𝘂 is a research lab focused on the intersections of art and technology. Their projects are invitations to think critically and empathetically about our world and to build a community that learns and works together. 𝘊𝘂 is a bid for another world to come into being. Glimpses of it are found in how we sustain ourselves, how we choose to listen instead of turn away, and how we question paradigms of acceleration and extraction. While art and technology form key fields of research, they continually lead them back to one another, which is where their real work takes place. We'll now be moving into a Q&A segment, and I'd like to encourage people to use the Q&A function of this Zoom meeting to submit your questions. And if you're viewing this on a mobile device, the Q&A function can be found right below this video. So to get the ball rolling, I'll actually start with a question just to get the thoughts from the three presenters for today. And I'd like to kind of find out a little bit more perhaps about the beginning, how the idea for Cloud Cryptid Friendship Society came about. Could you tell us a little bit more about that, please?
Maybe I can start and share a little bit about that. So we started exploring internet infrastructures in Singapore and with a performance project about data centers that we were beginning at the start of this year with called 𝘊𝘭𝘰𝘶𝘥, and that was with the NAC and 𝘊𝘂𝘺 Performing Arts and Tech Lab. And we started looking at the proliferation of data centers in Singapore, and we wanted to really ground and locate our understanding of the technology in data centers in the local context. And we wanted to understand what it was about Singapore that made it kind of a data center hub for the region. And so that kind of sparked our initial interest in internet infrastructures. And we realized that we have all of these structures surrounding us and that we rely on that we don't really notice, but they are part of the internet. We were looking at technology-based field guides from around the world and started exploring the idea of giving physical infrastructures the same attention and care that we extend to the natural world. We were drawn to the images of cable markings that you see on the ground with the spray painted utility markings that tell construction workers where to lay particular cables. And we were really taken with the idea of interpreting those and what it might mean to have alternative interpretations of this infrastructure that we see and walk by every day. And we wanted to use fiction as a tool to re-enchant this world of technology that we see around us, and that we often relate to a sense of disenchantment and a sense of totally a total loss of magic, and kind of bring all of that back in.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, you also kind of covered it a bit whilst you were talking, but I think what really caught my attention, kind of hearing your, I guess in the lead up to this, and also hearing the various presentations and the way that you structured it and spoke about it, a lot of how you thought about Cloud Cryptids as an entity really draws from the language of how we study natural history and, really scientific methods, academic sources and journals, for example, as well. And I was wondering, I mean, I'm sure that was entirely intentional also. And I was wondering if you could expand a little bit more about what, in relation to this form of speaking or perhaps the discipline of the study, what about that really struck out to you as something that you wanted to lean into and reference in the process of, I guess, conceptualizing this piece, but also thinking about, the data centers and the infrastructural elements that you were speaking about as well?
Yeah, no, I think that's something that we wanted to lean into, because a part of how we're approaching this is thinking about fiction and storytelling as a kind of research, but also research as a kind of storytelling and fiction making about the world around us. And so this approach, I think, is meant to spotlight that infrastructure isn't neutral. It's historic, it's contextual, it's social, it's created, it's a kind of knowledge that we create socially. And the natural history approach comes in also as a gesture to the wilderness of the internet. I think there's, just to elaborate a bit more on what 𝘊𝘺𝘺 mentioned about the demystification and disenchantment of the internet and technology in general, I feel like there is a very strong paradigm, not to go back to my character, but a paradigm of the internet and the technology as something that can be known, that can be predictable and can be managed. But part of what we were exploring here is this notion that actually it's a wilderness of unknowability and unpredictability. I think it's also something that we were thinking through around how citizen researchers might approach internet infrastructure and how social relationships might form around it. Yeah, anything to add, Ashley?
And also the way that we add specific references to like specific dates, we try to make it more believable through that. So we always try to link back a lot of the fiction back to actual factual research. For example, this comes into play in like the chat section, where we would drop additional context for people to understand. For example, like date references, where the 𝘊𝘺𝘺 was first found in like 1822. And then these can be read as like in-character comments or like even trolling comments, but they're just there to add additional factual weight back into this very fictional presentation.
Thanks for that. I think also for those who are still in the audience as well, feel free to use the chat function to now submit any questions that you might have for 𝘊𝘺, Ashley, and 𝘊𝘺𝘺 as well. And also, I think as people are thinking through some of their questions, I was also wanting to get a sense of whether the three of you would be able to expand a little bit on the process of conceptualizing your characters as well for this particular performance, and how that came to be, because there were three very distinct individuals with very distinct perspectives or points of view as to how to approach this area of approach our relationships, or how we understand cloud cryptids as well. Yeah, I was wondering if you'd like to speak to that a little bit as well.
I think it's quite funny you mentioned that, because we actually had a lot of fun through the process of developing this work. So we had half an idea to make this kind of a fictional thing where we have like tiny conspiracies like littered into each of our presentations. And for the longest time, we were trying to find a way of how all three of us can come up with one single conspiracy that then we contribute information to. But then we realized that we are all very different people. And so one of the tasks that we gave each other in putting this together was, let's imagine this as a PowerPoint party. So imagine that each of us go home, find like a conspiracy thesis on this topic, and then we each present to each other. And then what we like from that, we kind of then sort of like plotted it and like developed it further into each of our presentations, which then led to each of these three different characters coming out.
Yeah, they really kind of speak to, perhaps it's difficult to find one conspiracy that everybody can kind of align themselves to and readily commit to. But I think they really do speak to that plurality that you just mentioned. And I wondered, like, I guess in the course of thinking about your work as 𝘊𝘺𝘺 as well, you've just concluded a really successful season of programs. And I think also, you know, this online performance is not, I wouldn't say distinct from like different, like completely out of the world to what you've just done. I was wondering like how you see initiatives such as this cited alongside some of the other work that you do with workshops, with reading sessions and the like as well, and how, you know, you see them all connect or constellate around one another.
I actually love the word that you used, constellate, because that's something that we think about often in programming at 𝘊𝘺𝘺, where we don't necessarily want a linear storyline of like, here is a 3-act structure that builds on each other, but a variety of perspectives that constellate into something that people can make sense of independently. So I think the relationship between this program and the season of programs that we finished earlier in the year, there is a continued focus on materiality, on play, on strange and esoteric approaches to technology as a through line. I think we're also very keen on continuing to contextualize technological histories and practices in Singapore and the region. And part of that is our ongoing research into the idea that the cloud is a place on Earth, whether in the cables that connect different data centers to each other, the cooling towers that keep these data centers running, the people who maintain these data centers. And that's something that we continue to explore in Performal, which we will be revisiting in January at Scape at the Commerce Space Festival. I think something else that we are really interested in is speculation as a mode of inquiry. So something that's coming up in November is that Ashley is going to be running a speculative writing and coding workshop called Bring Your Own Bug Spray at an exhibition by Joe and Kapi at Outreach called Sorry for Technical Difficulties. Yeah, I think broadly we're really interested in fiction, performance, and embodied research, and constellating a variety of approaches to technology, because we don't really think there is one right way, but that we want to open the field to a much wider range.
Thanks for that. I'm also just looking at the chat to keep an eye on whether any questions come in. I hope I'm not imagining like I'm not on the wrong chat for the breakout room and not seeing our current chat, but currently not seeing any other questions come in. So we'll just keep the conversation going between ourselves and see how they go. But yeah, thanks for popping in some of these upcoming events and happenings as well. I think with this particular program and I guess how it began, a lot of what we just going back to how we sat down together and started to, I guess, pitch this idea to yourselves and how that started the wheels turning in terms of how you approached perhaps this online performance as well. I was wondering if you could also, the three of you could also share a little bit about why this particular format came to mind as something that you wanted to explore or kind of like dig into in the context of Skill Futures, because I know that we left it super open-ended and there were so many other kind of possibilities that you were weighing between as well. So it would be interesting to hear a little bit more about why this particular format kind of allowed you to flesh out perhaps some of the research areas that you were already engaged in with other forms as well.
I think Ans was observing earlier today that we really do have an interest in corporate non-speak. And I think, I mean, you can tell from the Zoom chat earlier on that we were really having a lot of fun with it. And I think we find the structures around, corporate non-speak and like, getting on Zoom and these technologies that we use in our work lives really hilarious and endlessly fascinating. And so when the chance to do Skill Futures over Zoom came up, we knew that we wanted to engage with Zoom as a technology and use really all of the functions that were available to us through it and explore how people use them in hilarious ways. And so I'm really glad we got to do that with the chat and with this, fictional 𝘖𝘶 society.
Yeah, I think there's just a question that's come in from the audience, and I'll just read it out here as well. And it's around the term itself, Cloud Cryptid, and how that came to be. Yeah, I was wondering if who wanted to pick up on that and respond.
So I think a really early idea for the Skill Future presentation was to look at those utility markings and fictionalize that as some kind of like hieroglyphic transmission from another species. I think we were just very drawn to the notion of some kind of interspecies dialogue and an esoteric, mysterious other that we could be in conversation with. So I think we were like thinking through like prophecy, we were thinking through like myth making and legends, and as we were just spitballing, we came across the term Cloud Cryptid. But if Alisha Chandra's character is anything to go by, it was Madam Angelina Chan who first coined the term cable creature. So all credit to her.
Yeah, it's nice also that it has like a cryptic kind of like connotation with the word cryptid as well. At least that is the case for me. And I feel like that resonates quite a bit also with the way that the program also ran and how that developed. But yeah, I think also, sorry, were you going to say something?
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to chime in a little bit more that I think part of the structure of today's performance was also trying to push at the notion of what knowledge production technology and infrastructure looks like. So if it's a research group, what does that mean? What does research mean? And the notion of the cryptid, I think, is something that really we're quite drawn to, because it's this thing that is neither proven nor disproven. So it's not a monster that's completely mythological, but it's not something that you can actually see in person. You can only really see traces, you can see indications, and you never actually see the thing itself. So this notion of something that is kind of constantly in the periphery of your vision that you can't really quite pin down, and trying to figure out some mode of research for that was something that we were toying with as well. And this ambivalence again of like, how do we both take the approach of knowledge production, which is, you know, usually like a demystification process, while also embracing this fantasy, this mystical, enchanting view of the internet.
Yeah, and there's another question that's just come in from Hanai as well. And it reads, I quote, "I'm wondering why the fictional CCFS is characterized as operating on scarcity." And this is, you know, in relation to funds, with time. We obviously had the free Zoom situation come in as well. So, and the calls for contributions and payment of membership dues. So yeah, why was that something that you all felt important to kind of pepper in as references throughout?
I think for us, so this also leads back into the whole fiction of it, and the whole reason why we use the name Friendship Society also, as opposed to like a working group or like a research group or like a patrol surveillance group, is also so that it's a bit more lighthearted, shows how much we're a bit more loosely organized than what you expect from an organization that has somewhat more credibility. And that kind of like goes back to the way we look at cryptids, the way we each offer different ways of observing these cryptids. So it's not just the idea of like knowledge production, but also the idea of the measurement of data. So how we observe these cryptids, for example, in my presentation, it's through imaging techniques, and through 𝘊𝘵𝘳 presentation is through more historical and like spiritual techniques, and for Alisha's it's more through like written accounts and writing. And so I guess in that way it kind of gives us more room to make it a bit more ridiculous in a way, but kind of still not be out of character.
Yeah, I mean, as Alisha rightly points out, art draws from life. So perhaps that also provides like yet another response to that particular question too. But I think there's also one more that's come in with regard to, I guess, the specific locales of these chapters and why Mountbatten and Hougang were chosen, and if there's perhaps any significance to the locales as well. Some other suggestions include Jurong or Changi. So yeah, were there particular reasons why these neighborhoods or these spaces were chosen over others?
So I think they're neighborhoods that our team frequents and know quite well. So I'm sorry, your name is 𝘊𝘵. 𝘊𝘵, if you would like to start a Cloud Cryptid Friendship Society subchapter in Jurong or Changi, as you know, the census is direly needing volunteers in those areas. So just get in touch and we'll help you to set up your own subchapter.
And perhaps that is also how the performance blurs into, or the characters blur into the current Q&A segment as well. But I'm also mindful of time and also thinking about where things are at. So perhaps we'll just take this final question that's just come in from Kapi. And it reads, there was a suggestion of a grander narrative of befrienders versus trappers of the cryptics. Is there a bigger, longer form narrative in the making?
So I feel like that's kind of the beauty of having us present from different perspectives of members, and we all kind of brought our own lore to the table, and I feel like it's sort of endless. Like we could all create these like varying strands of backstories, and there is that possibility of a bigger, longer form narrative. And I'm not sure where we go next with the Cloud Cryptid Friendship Society. We'll do the census first. We'll take it one step at a time.
Yeah, and perhaps there will be a Cloud Cryptic cinematic universe at some point coming up through the works. But I think, yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for really tuning in today and for spending your Wednesday evening with us. We really, really appreciate it. And yeah, that's all the time that we've got for this evening's program. And I'd really like to, of course, thank 𝘊𝘭𝘰𝘶 once again for for sharing, of course, and preparing such a lovely online performance for us to tune into. And for viewers who've joined us again as well, a big thank you. If you'd like to find out more about online programs from the Singapore Art Museum, please feel free to check us out on our socials or on our YouTube channels. And of course, if you're ever in the Tanjong Pagar area, the museum is currently located at the Tanjong Pagar District Park, and we do have a suite of exhibitions that are ongoing as well. So thank you once again for spending time with us, and we hope to have you at an upcoming Skill Futures episode again very soon. Thanks, everyone. Bye.